I wasn't even finished washing the dishes when my bank app nearly gave me a heart attack. I'd come to dinner for Rick's 62nd birthday, homemade chili, garlic bread, a slightly burned pecan pie. And now, apparently, $12,000 missing. The sounds of clinking silverware and laughter carried over from the living room, where the rest of the family had gathered around the TV. I could still hear Eli's exaggerated sports commentary, Marissa's high-pitched giggle, and Emma's squeals over a new iPad. I assumed it was a hand-me-down. Apparently, I was wrong. I dried my hands on the dish towel slung over my shoulder, pressed the Face ID on my phone again, and stared at the numbers. $11,987 gone. The transactions were recent, spread out over the last 6 weeks. Autopay. Eli Thompson, Venmo transfer, MT, Rent Depot, recurring. My stomach dropped. I scrolled faster, then slower, trying to make sense of the trail. No way, I had just reviewed this account last month. Everything was accounted for. My emergency fund, my travel savings, the deposit for that quiet retreat in Oregon I'd never taken. I backed out of the app and looked around the kitchen. The smell of chili still hung in the air. The counter was cluttered with disposable cups. A half-full salad bowl, Emma's tiny light-up shoes kicked off by the pantry. A framed family photo sat above the microwave, me and Marissa as kids, holding hands in matching fleece pajamas, grinning. I couldn't remember the last time we'd laughed like that. When I arrived 2 hours earlier, I came with a bottle of wine in one hand and a homemade apple tart in the other. Marissa greeted me with a quick air kiss, already mid-scroll on her phone. Emma ran to hug me, shouting, "Auntie Avery, you're rich now," as if it were just my new name. Carol, my mom, fluttered around the kitchen in a soft pink sweater, stirring the chili, like she hadn't noticed the tension. Rick sat on the back deck, sipping beer and poking at the fire pit with a stick. Dinner was fine, the same questions. How's work? Still single? Still in Seattle? They praised my freedom, my nice job, my cozy little apartment. But beneath the compliments was something else. Must be nice, someone mumbled. No diapers or rent or student loans to worry about. I laughed politely, the way I always did. But now I was staring at numbers I didn't authorize, transfers I didn't make, names that weren't mine. I walked back into the dining area, phone still in my hand. Marissa was sipping wine, legs curled up on the couch. Her nails were freshly done, neutral gel with tiny rhinestones. Eli was leaning against the fridge with a beer in one hand and a smirk on his face. "Hey," I said, holding up my phone, "did anyone use my banking app?" Marissa looked up, surprised but not concerned. "What do you mean?" "There are transfers I didn't make. A lot of money is gone." Eli took a sip of his beer. "Define a lot." "Almost $12,000. Marissa blinked. "Wow, that much?" I turned the screen to show them. "Look, these were from the last 6 weeks. I didn't approve any of this." Eli shrugged, leaning casually against the fridge door. "Relax, we just borrowed it, Avery. You've got more than enough." I stared at him. "We?" Marissa raised an eyebrow. "Come on, Avery, it's not like it's all gone. Some of it went to Emma's school supplies, and rent was tight this month." "You never asked." "We didn't think we had to," Eli said with a laugh. "You always help anyway." Carol stepped in from the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's going on?" I turned to her. "Did you know about this?" She paused. "Well, Marissa said she needed a little help, and I figured you wouldn't mind." Rick didn't look up from the TV. I felt like I was floating, like the ground had just quietly disappeared beneath me. I wasn't just mad about the money, I was devastated by the ease, the assumption, the utter casualness of it all. My emergency fund wasn't just cash, it was protection. Years of skipped vacations, side jobs, budget dinners. It was every night I said no to going out, every time I told myself, later, Avery, later, when it's safe. And now it was a joke, in my own house. I scanned the room again, the iPad in Emma's hands, Marissa's brand new boots by the door. Eli's car keys, he'd upgraded, I noticed, a newer model, sleek, silver. I swallowed the burn rising in my throat. This is theft. Marissa frowned. Avery, don't be dramatic, we're family. Family asks, family respects boundaries, family helps. No, I said, more quietly than I expected, they don't help themselves to $12,000 behind your back. Eli rolled his eyes. You live alone, no mortgage, no kids. Don't act like this is some kind of crisis. I stood there, staring at them. My mouth was dry. Not one person in that house looked sorry. This wasn't a one-time slip, it was just the first time they didn't hide it. Outside my apartment window, snow drifted in lazy spirals, settling on the fire escape. Like the city was trying to quiet itself. Inside, the only sound was the low hum of the heater and the occasional clink of my spoon against a half-eaten bowl of lentil soup. My living room was neat, minimal. A gray couch, a single plant, shelves lined with records I never had time to play. On the coffee table, my laptop, a stack of printed bank statements, and a folder I'd labeled in black Sharpie, unauthorized. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, but there it was, line after line. Rent transfer, $1,850, car repair, $600, utility relief, $312, recurring payments to accounts I didn't recognize. Yet the names felt eerily familiar in the fine print. M. Cooper, E. Thompson. I picked up my phone and opened a gallery of texts from the past 3 years. So many messages that started with, hey, quick favor, or, I promise it's just this once. 2017, Marissa called, crying, at 11 p.m., Emma had just turned 1. They were 3 weeks behind on rent. Please, Avery, I don't know who else to ask. I wired $1,500 that night, no strings attached, no questions asked, no thank you. I never brought it up again. There was the time Eli's car died, and I canceled a work retreat in San Diego to cover repairs. Another time, Mom's phone got cut off. She texted, Bill surprise, can you cover it till Friday? I did. She never followed up. I picked up one of the birthday cards, still sitting unopened on the shelf, Marissa's, from last year. Inside, a pre-printed, happy birthday, and a signature, no message, no effort. I took a sip of my now cold soup, placed the bowl aside, and dialed Mom. Hi, sweetheart, she answered, too cheerful, like she'd been expecting good news. Hey, I said flatly, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you know Marissa and Eli were pulling from my account? Silence. I thought you gave them access. Marissa said you were fine with it. She said that? Yes, she said carefully, and I figured, well, you always help. You're doing well, and that's not the same as saying yes. Carol sighed. Avery, you've always been the strong one, you live alone, no one depending on you. I just didn't think you'd be upset. I'm not upset, I said quietly, I'm done. There was a pause. You don't mean that. But I did. After hanging up, I opened my laptop again and began building the spreadsheet. I cross-referenced every transfer, every note. I color-coded the recurring ones. Flagged those linked to Marissa's address. Over 3 years, I'd made 47 separate payments, 0 repayments. I remembered Christmas 2 years ago. I bought Emma a STEM building kit, something she'd mentioned in passing. She squealed when she opened it. Marissa frowned. Couldn't you get her something cuter? I remembered Emma tugging at my sweater one night and whispering, "Mom says you can buy anything." I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold, organized, ready. The money was just a symptom. The disease was how easily they convinced themselves I'd say nothing. The office smelled faintly of lemon oil and paper. It was clean, almost too clean. A long wood table sat in the center of the room, surrounded by soft leather chairs. Along the wall, sunlight pushed through frosted glass panels, casting geometric shadows across the floor. I sat at one end, hands folded in my lap, a charcoal gray folder resting on the table in front of me. I'd dressed carefully that morning, dark slacks, a pressed blouse, no earrings, no perfume. I wanted to look like someone who meant business, not a daughter, not a sister, a client. Across from me sat Julia Carter, late 40s, sharp bob, black blazer, no small talk. I liked her already. She flipped open the folder I'd brought and began to scan the contents. She didn't speak, just nodded once in a while, her pen making crisp check marks in the margins. Bank statements, email printouts, screenshots of text messages. A spreadsheet with 3 years of unauthorized transfers, coded by recipient, date, and category. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was surgical. After a few minutes, Julia closed the folder and looked up. "You've built a case." I exhaled. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath. She tapped the folder lightly. "You kept every receipt." Almost obsessively, I said, "They used to call me paranoid." Her mouth curved slightly, not a smile, just recognition. "I've seen worse," she said, "but this is thorough, very thorough." I nodded. I wasn't angry at first, just confused, then disappointed, then tired, then I got organized. Julia leaned back. "Do you want to warn them, or pursue legal action?" I hesitated. She added, "Either option has consequences. Warning gives them time to spin a story. Litigation gets messy, but it makes a statement." "They're my family," I said slowly, "but they act like I'm a service provider." She said nothing, just let the words hang there. I looked out the window. Across the street, a barista was wiping down an outdoor table. Brushing away early spring pollen, everything outside this room felt too normal for the kind of betrayal I was sitting with. Last year, Emma had a school fundraiser. I donated $300 and bought 4 boxes of cookies. A week later, a coworker told me Marissa had called me guilty rich. I hadn't known what that meant then, I did now. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly, "but I do want it to stop. And I want them to know it wasn't okay." Julia folded her hands. "Do you want closure or justice?" I met her eyes. "Both," I said, "but I'll settle for justice." She nodded, opened a fresh file on her laptop, and began typing. As she worked, my phone buzzed silently in my pocket. I didn't need to check it. The last few days had been a flood of messages. Marissa sending memes, Eli sending question marks. My mother leaving voicemails that began with, "Sweetheart," and ended with, "Don't make this a thing." I had stopped replying. I wasn't interested in explanations anymore. I wasn't looking for remorse. I was done educating people who didn't want to learn. Julia finished typing and turned the screen toward me. "This is the initial complaint. Once we file, the bank will be compelled to release additional records. And we'll move into formal mediation or escalation." I read over the document, my name at the top, their names beneath mine. I felt like I was staring at a police report for a crime that had no fingerprints, just assumptions. Julia closed the laptop. "One last thing," she said, "once we knock, there's no going back." I looked at her, steady, then knock hard. They thought I'd just get it out of my system, cry a little, text a dramatic paragraph, go quiet for a few weeks, then show up again with wine and something homemade. So when I invited them for dinner, they said yes without hesitation. I brought no wine, and the only thing I'd cooked was the truth. The backyard looked almost exactly like it had last fall. String lights glowing overhead, porch fans spinning lazily in the summer air. Plates of grilled chicken and potato salad laid out on the table. Like this was just another Sunday evening. Marissa wore a flowy sundress, pretending she wasn't annoyed. Eli had already cracked open a beer and sprawled across 2 patio chairs, like we were tailgating. Carol bustled between the kitchen and the yard, bringing out lemonade, napkins, anything that could distract her from eye contact. Rick stayed seated with a paper plate and a faintly confused expression, like he couldn't remember if this was a birthday or a barbecue. I sat across from them, hands folded in my lap. As a teenager, I once told my mom, half joking, if I ever disappear, I hope someone knocks first. Now I was the one doing the knocking. Eli tipped his drink in my direction. So, what's the big occasion? Don't tell me you're getting married, we'll all faint. Marissa gave a brittle laugh, or moving to Europe to escape us. Carol forced a smile. Whatever it is, honey, we're just glad you're here. I stood up and walked inside, returning a moment later with my laptop and a stack of folders. I set one in front of each of them. What's this? Rick asked, squinting. I didn't answer right away. I plugged my laptop into the HDMI cable leading to the mounted TV above the fireplace. The screen lit up, a neatly organized spreadsheet, color-coded and cross-referenced. The silence was instant. Over the past 3 years, I've transferred $47,000 to this family. Most of it without being asked, none of it ever repaid. These folders contain printouts, bank statements, text messages, emails, and a summary of transactions pulled directly from my account. Marissa laughed, but it cracked halfway through. What is this, Avery, some kind of joke? Carol picked up the folder, her hands trembled slightly. You didn't have to do this. No one else thought anything was fair, I replied. Eli leaned forward, the smirk flickering. You went to a lawyer? Yes, I said, and the Washington Financial Investigation Bureau. Rick's cup rattled against the table. Marissa's fork slipped off her plate with a clink. Carol blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake herself up from something. You invited us here just to what? Accuse us of being criminals? Marissa snapped. No, I said calmly, I invited you here to watch me stop pretending. Then, knock knock. 3 sharp raps on the front door, no one moved. I stood and walked to open it. On the porch stood 3 agents in dark blazers. The lead officer held a manila envelope in one hand and a tablet in the other. Their jackets bore the emblem of the Washington Financial Investigation Bureau. Ms. Avery Monroe? Yes, I said, I'm the complainant. He nodded. We're here with legal warrants to begin preliminary questioning and documentation retrieval. Is Eli Thompson present? Eli stood, face blanching. This is insane. Marissa Cooper, the agent continued. Marissa, frozen. I didn't, she whispered. The second agent stepped forward. Please remain seated. This is a non-criminal administrative inquiry at this stage, but refusal to cooperate can escalate the matter. Carol clutched her napkin. You didn't need to do this, Avery, we're family. I looked at her, voice low but steady. Then maybe you should have acted like it. Rick finally spoke, barely above a whisper. We thought you'd be okay. I turned back to the agents. You can begin. The lead investigator nodded, and the room shifted. What had started as a backyard dinner became something else entirely. A formal record, a reckoning. My mother finally looked me in the eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to say. I didn't go back to my apartment after the investigation. I went home. To the one place that never asked anything of me. Spring Hollow was quieter than I remembered. The road into town curved past dry fields and hills dotted with rusted mailboxes and hand-painted signs. Edith's cottage stood just where it always had, at the edge of the woods. Tucked behind a crooked white fence and a garden that refused to behave. I parked beneath the old maple tree and stared at the front porch. The wind chimes were still there, still tangled, still slightly off-key. The key she gave me all those years ago fit without resistance. The lock clicked, the door opened. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and something faintly sweet, like dried orange peel and soap that had long stopped being used. The wood-paneled walls were the same honey tone, the curtains were floral, sun-faded. A teacup still sat on the kitchen counter, dust pooling at the bottom. No one had touched this place since she passed. I didn't cry. I set my bag down and began to clean, quietly, methodically. First the kitchen, then the bedroom, then the porch. I opened windows to let in the summer air, then scrubbed the sink until it shone. In the hallway, I found a small cardboard box, labeled in Grandma Edith's handwriting. For Avery, when she's ready. Inside, photos, letters, one unopened, folded in thirds. I sat on the bed and opened it. If they ever forget who you are, this house will remember. Love, Grandma E. That night, I made soup from scratch, carrot, potato, garlic. I ate it on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, no music, no emails, no questions, just air. The next morning, I stepped outside, barefoot, and walked to the edge of the lavender garden. The purple blooms were tangled and wild, buzzing with bees. I crouched down, ran my fingers gently across the petals, and breathed in. Lavender doesn't ask, it just grows. A knock on the porch startled me. I turned to see a woman holding a basket of tomatoes. June, she said, smiling, used to be neighbors with Edith. She handed me the basket without waiting to be invited in. She talked about you all the time, said you were the only one who never expected anything but love. I swallowed hard. She defended you, you know, June added, even when the others didn't understand. Said Avery's got boundaries, and boundaries aren't walls. We sat on the porch steps for a while, not saying much. Just the sound of birds in the trees and the creak of the swing. When she left, I walked inside and pulled out my phone. I removed the SIM card, slid it into a drawer, and replaced it with a new one. Only 3 numbers went into the contact list: my lawyer, my coworker Dina, and Kira, my college friend. Who once said, "You don't need to carry other people's expectations, you're not a suitcase." I opened my laptop and typed one last message. To Carol, Marissa, Eli, do not contact me. Legal process will speak for itself, Avery. No explanations, no more open doors. I stepped outside again, barefoot in the grass, and stood at the edge of the lavender. The breeze shifted, lifting the scent around me. The sun was warm on my shoulders. And for the first time in months, maybe years, my shoulders dropped. The wind carried no voices, no guilt, no debts, just space, finally space. They called, they wrote, they begged, none of them ever said, "I'm sorry." Marissa sent a long email with phrases like, emotional misunderstanding, and, family should never turn legal. Eli texted, "We didn't know you'd take it this far." Mom sent a handwritten letter with no return address, 10 pages, all pain, no apology. You destroyed the family over a bit of money. I read the first line, then fed it into the shredder. It's been almost a year since the knock on the door. Since that evening when the truth stopped being mine alone and became official. I moved out of Seattle 2 months later, found a new apartment in Spokane, small, bright, mine. The walls are painted soft gray, there's a balcony with space for plants. A kitchen I actually use. In March, I started a new job at a small cybersecurity firm. They work exclusively with clients who've experienced data abuse, nonprofits, survivors, whistleblowers. During the final interview, the CEO asked, "What made you apply here?" I said, "I understand what it means to be violated quietly." She didn't ask me to elaborate, she just nodded and said, "Welcome to the team." My days now are simple. I walk to work. I buy groceries without checking anyone else's list. I cook for one. I journal 1 line a day. I read books I never finished before. I don't check missed calls. My phone is quiet because I let it be. One afternoon in April, Julia Carter emailed me the final case update. Settlement complete, financial block confirmed, no further contact required unless initiated by you. She didn't add, "Congratulations," she didn't need to, the quiet said enough. A few nights later, I passed a girl in the grocery store who reminded me of Emma. Same wide eyes, same messy ponytail. I remembered Emma once whispering, "I want to be just like you." For a moment, I smiled, then paused. Would I want her to be? I hope not, not the version I was, not the woman who equated giving with worthiness. But maybe this version, the one who cooks without guilt. Who walks without looking at her phone. The one who finally understands boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. At a team lunch in May, someone asked me what I'd tell someone going through betrayal. I thought for a moment, then said, "Sometimes healing starts with the lock clicking behind you." They all nodded, no one asked me to explain, maybe they understood. That evening, I got home, fed the cat I'd recently adopted, her name is Iris, and poured a glass of wine. The sky outside glowed faintly orange. I pulled up Grandma Edith's old playlist on my speaker. The one with jazz and soft gospel, and a recording of her laugh tucked at the end. I didn't cry when it played, I just let it fill the space. I turned off my phone, turned on the music Grandma once loved. And for the first time in a decade, I danced, alone, but not lonely. I didn't leave angry, I left because no one noticed how quiet I had become. Sometimes the real turning point in life isn't loud. It's the quiet moment when you stop explaining yourself and start protecting your peace. Family should never be the reason you lose yourself. Love, when it's real, doesn't ask you to disappear just to keep the room warm. Even in the hardest chapters, dignity isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when to let go, and sometimes letting go is how we finally come home to ourselves. If this story felt familiar, if it echoed something deep inside you, feel free to share your thoughts. I'd love to know, what did family mean to you, and when did that meaning change?